In the late 18th century, India's Maratha Empire stood as one of the most powerful forces on the subcontinent. Its territory stretched wide, its generals were feared, and its royal courts shimmered with wealth, ambition, and envy. But within the palace of the Holkar dynasty, beneath the golden ceilings and the mesmerizing walls of Indore, a quiet terror grew. A terror so subtle, so invisible, that most victims never knew what killed them. Her name was Mena Bai Holkar, a queen remembered not for the army she commanded or the monuments she built, but for the body she left behind. Mena Bai entered the Holkar palace not through war, lineage, or political negotiation, but through charm, beauty, and a gift for studying the weaknesses of others. Born outside the main royal line, she was underestimated by nearly everyone around her. And that was their first mistake. Because power, true power, does not always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it smiles. And in Mena Bai's case, sometimes it hides in a cup of sherbet. Historical records, letters from palace officials, and confidential reports sent to the Peshwa reveal a chilling pattern. Where Mena Bai's interests were threatened, people died. Not quickly, not loudly, but slowly, silently, with symptoms that baffled even the royal physicians of the time. A rival wife, a political advisor, a handmaiden who overheard something she shouldn't have, all struck by mysterious illnesses. But to understand how Mena Bai became one of India's most quietly dangerous women, we must begin at a time when the Holkar dynasty was shaken by succession conflicts. Power was slipping between bloodlines, generals were rising and falling like monsoon tides, and every noble in Indore fought to secure their position. And in the shadows of this chaos, Mena Bai began her ascent. She studied court politics carefully, watching which minister held influence, which generals were loyal, and which women in the zenana were vying for control. She learned the movements of each rival, when they prayed, who they trusted, and what foods they ate. And then, she learned about poisons. The palace kitchens were a place of secrets, herbs, extracts, and powders with both healing and devastating properties. Mena Bai befriended the right cooks, bribed the right servants, and used charm where money failed. She learned how to make a poison look like an illness, how to use low doses over time to confuse physicians, and how to ensure that deaths appeared natural in a world already full of disease. Her first confirmed victim was not a king, nor a noble, but a young woman who was never supposed to die. She was a maid, one who served the more influential queens of the palace. She had seen Mena Bai exchanging sealed packets of herbs with a palace cook late at night. Days later, the maid fell violently ill. Her hair came out in clumps, her skin turned pale, and her voice grew weak. The official report described it as a fevered sickness. But private palace correspondence reveals the truth. She died after drinking a cup of warm milk. A cup that only Mena Bai had touched. This death went unnoticed by the outside world. But inside the palace, whispers began. And Mena Bai knew something important. If a small death could go undetected, what about a larger one? What about a rival queen? What about a minister? What about a king? The rise of Mena Bai had only just begun, and Indore had no idea what was coming. As the whispers inside the Holkar palace continued to grow, Mena Bai watched them with quiet confidence. She did not fear suspicion. She understood something far more important. In a court full of powerful men and jealous women, accusations without proof were meaningless. Rumors could be buried. Witnesses could disappear. And fear could be shaped into silence. Her next target was far more dangerous than a maid. This time, it was a woman who stood between her and influence. Rani Tulsabai, the highest-ranking queen in the palace, widow of Maharaja Yashwantarao Holkar. Tulsabai was powerful, respected, and fiercely protective of her son, the child ruler Mulhar Rao Holkar II. Anyone who threatened the line of succession was an enemy in her eyes. And Mena Bai was quickly becoming one. The two women were opposites. Tulsabai was authoritative, politically sharp, and well-connected among Maratha chiefs. Mena Bai was quiet, elegant, disarmingly gentle, and secretly lethal. Their rivalry began subtly, an exchange of cold glances, a withheld invitation, a changed seating arrangement during ceremonies. But in royal courts, Small tensions often foreshadow greater storms. One evening, during a private gathering of the royal women, Tulsa Bai made a remark. A simple sentence, but one that cut deeper than she realized. She mocked Mena Bai's insignificant origins, suggesting that some women in the palace were better suited to the kitchens than to the throne. Mena Bai smiled, but inside something hardened. That night, she visited the palace gardens, where a healer's hut stored rare herbs used for treating illnesses. Some of these herbs, when mixed in the wrong proportions, could cause stomach convulsions, confusion, gradual paralysis. Others could mimic cholera or dysentery. Mena Bai had learned their recipes well. Over the next few weeks, something strange happened. Tulsa Bai began falling ill after meals. At first, it was mild, fatigue, weakness, headaches she dismissed as stress. But slowly her condition worsened. She vomited frequently. Her vision blurred. At times she struggled to breathe. The royal physicians were baffled. They tried every remedy they knew, herbal mixtures, oils, prayers, even exorcisms. But her symptoms never aligned with any known disease. It was as though her body was deteriorating without reason. Behind closed doors, servants whispered, "This is someone's doing." Some believed demons had cursed her. Others suspected political enemies. But nobody spoke Mena Bai's name aloud. Even the boldest servants feared her. Because by now, everyone knew the stories. A cup of milk, a bowl of fruit, a small gesture of kindness, and then death. Yet Tulsa Bai was not an easy woman to kill. Each time her condition worsened, she recovered just enough to resume her duties. Mena Bai realized she needed something stronger, something unmistakable, something fatal. The opportunity came during a festival celebration. The palace was alive with music, lamps, and dancers. The zenana bustled with royal women exchanging sweets, perfumes, and traditional gifts. In the chaos of celebration, no one noticed Mena Bai slipping a small packet of fine powder into a silver dish of sweetened betel leaves, pan, made especially for Tulsa Bai. Hours later, screams echoed from the queen's private chamber. The most powerful woman in Indore had collapsed, foaming at the mouth. Physicians rushed to save her, but it was too late. Her heartbeat slowed. Her limbs stiffened. Her eyes glazed over. And Tulsa Bai Holkar, the queen regent of the Holkar dynasty, was dead. Her death was officially declared as sudden illness brought on by exhaustion. But the palace was not convinced. Ministers exchanged wary glances. Servants trembled. And for the first time, people dared to speak the truth quietly to one another. This was murder. But if Tulsa Bai's death shocked Indore, what happened next terrified it. Because with Tulsa Bai gone, the balance of power shifted dramatically. The young King Mulhar Rao too was left vulnerable. Political factions rose against each other. And in the shadows, Mena Bai moved like a silent predator, calm, patient, and entirely unnoticed. She began influencing decisions. She whispered into ministers' ears. She manipulated alliances. She removed anyone who questioned her proximity to the throne. Poison was no longer just a weapon. It was a language, a tool, a path to control. And soon, she would use it on someone far more important than any queen. The king himself. The stage was set. The palace was trembling. And Mena Bai Holkar was no longer just a royal woman. She was a silent force, untraceable, unstoppable, and poised to change the future of the Holkar dynasty forever. With Rani Tulsa Bai dead, the Holkar palace plunged into uncertainty. Ministers scrambled to hold the state together. Factions formed overnight. Every official, every noble, every guard seemed to choose a side. And in the middle of this political storm, a quiet woman with soft eyes and a gentle voice watched everything from behind her veiled curtain. Mena Bai Holkar. The woman no one suspected, yet everyone feared. Her influence grew faster than anyone realized. She presented herself as the grieving, loyal palace woman who only wished to protect the young king. But behind closed doors, she whispered suggestions to generals, hinted warnings to nobles, and reminded ministers of their loyalties. She was soft when she needed to be, sharp when she wanted to be, and invisible whenever danger approached. But soon she faced a new obstacle, the child king Mulhar Rao Holkar II. He was barely a teenager, sweet-natured, innocent, but he was also intelligent, observant, and increasingly aware that something was deeply wrong in his palace. He had watched his mother, Tulsabai, die under mysterious circumstances. And though he never accused Mena Bai directly, he watched her with quiet suspicion. And that made him dangerous. The ministers began advising the boy king more frequently. They encouraged him to reduce the influence of the royal women. They told him to take control of his court. Some even whispered that he should deny Mena Bai access entirely. Mena Bai heard these whispers, and she knew what must come next. Unlike her previous victims, the king wasn't a rival. He wasn't an enemy. He was an obstacle to her survival. And an obstacle in a palace like the Holkars, where power was fragile and alliances could shift overnight, was a threat that could not be ignored. But killing a king was not like killing a maid. It was not like killing a queen. A king's death invited investigations, suspicion, and chaos. One wrong move and the entire palace would turn against her. So she planned carefully, quietly, patiently. She began visiting the boy more often, bringing him sweets, fruits, warm milk, always appearing loving, motherly, trustworthy. She spoke kindly to him. She soothed his fears. She made herself indispensable during his bouts of stress. And slowly, painfully slowly, she began adding small, nearly undetectable doses of poison. Not enough to kill him. Just enough to weaken him, confuse him, break him. The king began suffering dizzy spells. He collapsed during meetings. His speech grew slurred. His appetite disappeared. His heart weakened. The physicians blamed stress, exhaustion, royal pressure, anything but foul play. Because who would dare poison a king? But the ministers were not fools. They watched the boy deteriorate. They saw Mena Bai's increasing closeness. And they began to suspect. On a cold February day in 1833, after weeks of suffering, Mulhar Rao Holkar II collapsed for the final time. His body trembled violently. He struggled to breathe. Physicians tried everything, herbs, oils, prayers, chants, but nothing slowed the poison silently killing him from the inside. Before sunset, the boy king was dead, barely 22 years old. The Holkar dynasty was thrown into chaos. Suspicions exploded. Officials whispered dark theories. Some blamed rival factions. Others accused the British. But many, silently, privately, pointed toward the same person, Mena Bai. Yet proving anything was impossible. She left no trace, no witness, no evidence. And she remained calm, composed, grieving, the perfect mask. For a moment, it seemed she had won again. But destiny had other plans. Because after the king's death, the British demanded a full restructuring of the Holkar court. New administrators were appointed. Power shifted rapidly. And in the sudden internal shuffling, Mena Bai's influence collapsed overnight. She was stripped of access, isolated, pushed aside. Those who once feared her now hunted her quietly. Those she had manipulated turned against her. Those whose loved ones had died demanded justice. Soon she found herself cut off from the palace she once controlled. No allies, no protection, no power. Her downfall was swift and silent, just like her crimes. And in the end, no one knows exactly what became of her. Some say she fled the palace and lived hidden until her death. Some say she died from the same poison she used on others. Others whisper she was quietly executed, her death erased from official records to avoid scandal. Her name disappeared from history. Her story dissolved into rumor. Her legacy became a cautionary tale whispered among palace servants. A tale of a woman who rose through silence, killed through softness, and fell without a sound. Mena Bai Holkar, the real woman behind the title, whispered even today in parts of Indore.